The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeart radio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Geneva, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast with limited commercials. Now, here's host, Dom Geneva.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of your No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Geneva, your host, every Saturday right here and at 10 o'clock. But you can get all the previous shows on NoNonsenseRoundtable.com. We have like 300 and something shows, maybe 350 shows so far. Go in there. There's got to be something that you like. So today, if we have a show, we have shows about people you know, you want to know more about, and people that you don't know that you should know. I think this fella I have across from me is somebody that you may not know unless you're really in the music business here, but you should know. His name is Billy Goodness. So welcome to the show, Billy.
Well, thank you, Dom. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me over.
Now, you're a Rochester guy, right?
Born and raised, I grew up in the town of Greece.
Okay, you know the difference between Savoya and Abbott's? Which
Absolutely.
I had guests once who said he was from Rochester. He had no idea.
Didn't know.
Okay, so tell me, my silly question I always ask first is that you're a musician. You make your living from the music business.
That's right.
What did you want to do when you were 10 years old? Always in the music business?
Always.
You want to be?
Always. Yeah. By the time I was 10 years old, I was playing a lot.
And
not out or professionally, but no, I started playing.
Very few 10-year-old professionals.
You know, everybody has
I
those,
gotcha.
Yeah. Everybody has those stories about, I was in the clubs when I was underage. I don't know where all those stories come from, but I didn't have that story.
Oh, really?
No, I started out very, very little as just attracted to a piano in my aunt's house. And, I could sit on a Sears and Roebuck catalog for those of us who remember Sears and Roebuck, or, the phone book when it was.
Oh, yeah. When we had a phone book.
Yeah, when we actually had a phone book. And I would just sit there for hours and pick out little songs and put pieces of paper on the notes so I would know where to start. And then I'd get everybody to come in and I'd play like Good King Wenceslas or something that I had figured out. And that was what I was doing as a very young child. And I always knew that was what I wanted to do, but I never really gave it a thought. It was just more or less what I was rather than what I was doing.
Now, obviously, your aunt played the piano then, right? Or uncle, aunt, or was it a family thing, or?
I don't think that aunt played the piano. Maybe somebody in the family did. I never remember anyone playing it. I just remember it being in this room, and I could go and go in there and kind of play around with it.
Well, one time having a piano was a mark of prestige, too.
Right.
I mean, you may not play it, but you had it in your,
that could have been
like a conspicuous
I did
thing.
have an uncle that was a piano player and played organ. And I had a cousin that played guitar, but people have asked me at times in my life if I come from a musical family and, did your parents or anybody, play anything? And my answer is, well, my dad played the stereo. And he played it really well.
And played it really loud.
Well, he just played great stuff. So, as a very young musician, I was hearing great music.
So when you were young, what kind of music did you like? I mean, obviously it's the day of, rock and roll. I mean, this isn't back in the 50s.
No, but I grew up listening to people like Perry Como.
Really?
Oh yeah, I was a big Perry Como fan as a toddler.
You're older than you look.
Well, either that or I just listened to a lot of older music. But yeah, I mean, I can remember hearing that stuff and hearing the Glenn Miller Orchestra and people like Billy Eckstine and Sinatra. So that was the kind of music that was playing in my house as a young child, and then. Then the Beatles happened.
Oh yeah, and I remember back then it was like, there's this band from England, and they haven't played here yet, but it's and the hype about, I mean, it was magnificent, the marketing, because they wouldn't play here in the United States until they had a number one song. They wouldn't play, so they didn't come, so they held back rather than getting in front of it. And by that time, the frenzy was there, and the rest is history.
Well, they had long hair.
Well, yes. Isn't that true? Every generation shocks the previous generation. Oh my God, they have long hair. You know what my mother's problem with them was?
What?
They don't pay United States taxes. These guys are from England. They're making all their money, and they don't even pay taxes in the United States.
I never thought of that, and that was really not on the radar when I was a kid. I didn't hear that story. It was mostly that they had long hair.
Oh yeah,
that was the big thing. But
and the pointy shoes. I remember going for shoes when I was a boy, and you had to have they call them fence climbers because they would stick in the fence, right? You had to be as pointy as they could be.
The Beetle boots, absolutely.
Yeah. So a
little Beatles reference.
That's right. So let's progress a little bit. So you got involved. I mean, obviously you didn't play the piano forever. I mean, it was a step to get someplace. So.
Yeah, 4th grade. I'll never forget. That was when they allowed you to pick what you were going to play in the band. And I was so I came home that day with a pair of drumsticks and a little wooden drum pad and announced to my parents that I was going to be a drummer.
Oh, joy.
Yeah, they were really excited about that.
Yeah.
Because we had a piano in the living room.
That's right.
But I remember that. I really wanted to be a drummer, and I think I always did, and I had the piano. I used to play, this is kind of a little odd maybe, but remember the hangers that had like the little dowels at the bottom? It'd be a wire hanger, but you'd have that cardboard thing. So I used to drive my mom crazy because I would take them apart. I would steal those dowels, and then those were drumsticks.
Well, you have to think about drumming, and I've had a couple of drummers on. One was Carl Palmer, and the thing is that I think it's probably the least appreciated thing in a band. Now you listen to Ringo and you listen to what he does with some of the songs, and if you just take the incredible creativity it takes to play the drums, it's not as recognized, I think, as a guitar or whatever. But do you think that?
Well, I understand what you're saying. And sometimes drummers are not recognized as contributing, I think, as much as
guitars.
Yeah. Yeah. I've talked to people that have plus or negative opinions on Ringo's playing. And I loved Ringo's response to that one time when somebody asked him, they said, well, what do you say to people that, say, well, maybe Ringo's not the greatest drummer in the world? And his answer was perfect. He said, well, I just tell them I was the drummer in the Beatles. Okay, next question.
There you go. There you go.
Being a drummer is this is what I've done all my entire life. It's something I love to do. But I think drummers contribute a lot.
Oh yeah, they do. I was looking on the internet or TV one day years ago, and it was about, I forget what drummer it was about. It was Buddy Rich or something like that. And I started listening more to drummers. When I'm at a concert, I'm at a band, I start listening to what the guy is doing. And if your natural tendency, I think, is to listen to the guitars, okay? But when you listen to the drums, there's a lot of creativity there that you maybe maybe should be a little bit more aware of, I think.
Well, the drums are really hopefully putting down the foundation that everyone else can play on top of. It's funny you mentioned Buddy Rich, because Buddy Rich was a phenomenal drummer. As a drummer, that was not ever something that I aspired to. I was never the drummer that sat for any given length of time and tried to figure out these fancy licks and the complicated things. And I was always just listening to the groove without knowing what it was called at that point. But it was really just about how does it feel. And so that's kind of been my approach as a drummer. And that's probably been a key component to my career as a studio drummer, because nobody really wants to know how many beats per minute I can play.
And before we get out of this break, I want to give a little retail to something that you are promoting in the near future.
An evening of Bacharach to help support music in the schools. Yes, I'd love to talk about that.
And as far as our audience goes, I think this is right up our alley. Burt Bacharach, and we're going to have a little exit music of Burt Bacharach.
Great.
This is Don for my friend Todd, who owns Martinizing Dry Cleaning in Fairport. Like I like to say to you, he picks your clothes up and he drops your clothes off. Why schlep them yourself? I love the word schlep. You can save your time and your effort and your gas and do other things rather than take your clothes back and forth. They do a great job. Their number is 425-4242, 425-4242. Use them. I do all the time. This is Dom Genova for my friend Jack Greco at Jack Greco Furniture. I'd invite you to go see Jack Greco if you're looking to buy furniture right now. But beyond that, I'd invite you to go see Jack Greco if you're ever going to buy new furniture. And why? You can look and dream and plan how exactly you'd like your furniture. The type of wood, construction is half the fun. It's going to be reflective of your taste, and quite frankly, you'll want to pass it down as an heirloom. Can't say that about the big box stores. Go see Jack. Well, welcome back. We are having a wonderful discussion with a local. I'm not insulting you saying you're a local musician, am I?
No.
Okay.
Everybody's local somewhere.
Well, yeah. No, I said that with somebody once, and they said, well, I've done things nationally. And okay. Didn't mean to offend you.
Yeah, you can't offend me.
No, that's good.
It's all good.
That's good. But Billy Goodness, and we were talking about the music business. And before the show, we were having a really interesting conversation about music and music. There's music, performing music, and there's music, studio music, and it's really kind of two different things. And I was getting quite an education with that. So let's touch base a little bit about the different aspects of being a musician.
Sure. Well, so you kind of divided it into two groups. Performing and studio. I think they're both performance. One is live.
Yeah.
One is in the studio. I think a studio musician is someone who is basically playing under the microscope. I mean, everything you do is really important and it needs to be precise. One of the things I learned real early on in my career, I always wanted to be a studio musician. I went in the studio very, very young. Somebody in Rochester, another local musician from back then, there was a band called Rain. And Ted Paris was the bass player, and he took me and my little high school rock band into a studio, and we recorded some tunes, and I was hooked. But you're asking specifically about what is it like working in a studio. Mm-hmm. And the way I look at it is I'm really there to deliver somebody else's vision. Mm-hmm. Either the artist has a vision of what they're trying to accomplish, or oftentimes the producer who's hired by the artist or by the label to deliver this record in whatever time period that they have to deliver it in. And then you're also dealing with engineers, people who are responsible for capturing a great sound that will end up on the record. So there's a lot of different people in the studio doing their jobs. As a drummer or any musician, but I'm speaking from the drummer's chair, it's my job to make it easy for them to do their job. Mm-hmm. So I need to show up with great sounding drums so the engineer's happy. And I need to show up with a very open mind and a willingness to be produced. And I use that term a lot when I talk to people that want to be studio musicians. I say you need to be able to be which simply means you're not going to walk through the door with the best idea. Mm-hmm. Somebody might ask you to just play something, and that happens a lot, and I'll play something, but I'm always open to somebody coming back to me and saying, I like what you did there, or, can we do it this way, or can we do that, or can we move this around, or whatever mm-hmm. the direction is. And my job is to do that and to deliver it and have it feel right and be comfortable for the players and for the other players that are on the session. If it's going down from the floor, what we call from the floor is when musicians are all together recording. A lot of recording today is done remotely. A lot of the stuff that I play on is done remotely. So I'm doing tracks on my own that somebody's going to fly into a session, or in other words, bring those tracks into their recording session and mix them in. So there's a lot of different ways that it gets done. If you're in the studio, you're working in person with that artist, or at least the producer, or whoever's in charge of getting the track the way they want it. And when you're doing it remotely, it's the same process. It's just the matter of them, giving you feedback and you reacting to that feedback.
So you could be in different studios in different parts of the country, and you're contributing. I never even considered
different parts of the world.
Really?
So I'm working on an album right now for an artist who lives in Stockholm, Sweden.
Really?
A guy named Quint Starkey, great songwriter, originally from Northern England, lived in LA all through the 80s, taught at GIT, which is Guitar Institute. Mm-hmm. Now lives in Stockholm, Sweden. He's working on his third album, and I'm collaborating with him on that album. The first single was just released 2 days ago, I think. So we worked on that track together with him in Stockholm and me in Rochester.
Wow, that's cool. You know, I talked to some of the guys from the old days, you know, like Chuck Mercado, and he was talking about being at Motown, and the echo chamber was the basement.
Yes. It was physically a room.
Yeah.
It was actually a room.
Yeah.
With a speaker and a microphone.
Well, you know, I'll drop a name. You know who really is kind of beside himself with what's happening now is Felix Calvieri.
Sure.
He says, you know, the auto tune. He says, man, I got to tell you, it's not like the old days. The old days, he said, we were craftsmen. Says you got in, you got so many shots at it. He says, but you know, there wasn't, you know, like an 8-track was a big deal.
Oh, absolutely. I started out recording on a 4-track machine, and I can remember when 8-track came out, and we thought, oh my God, this is like crazy. And I'll never forget the comment that somebody made. It might even have been me, when the studio I was working a lot at the time here in Rochester got a 16-track machine.
Ooh.
And we were like, what are we going to do?
What are we going to do? We're going
to put a cowbell on one track or something?
That's right.
Of course, nowadays we do that.
Well, you know, I don't understand that. You see these boards and they have, you know, like 300 slides on it, and you're like, what the heck is going on with that?
Well, a lot of times back in those days when you were doing a mix, it was a very active thing, and you would do it with multiple people in the room, running different sliders to get the mix because nothing was automated. Nowadays, everything's automated. You can run volumes and you can pan things. You can do whatever you want to in the studio because it's all computerized, and it makes it real easy, which is why we have that opportunity to make music with a large amount of distance between ourselves, physical distance. Like I just said, working with Quint when he's in Stockholm, I'm in Rochester. It doesn't matter because everything is basically done in the computer, and you can take my tracks and drop them into your session, and you can send me your tracks and I can drop them into my session. So the recording industry has vastly changed since my first foray into the studio with a 4-track machine. And even then we thought, well, this is so cool. But think about it this way. I mentioned recording from the floor. So from the floor just means that you've got a bunch of musicians recording all together. So in those days, if somebody made a mistake, depending on what it was, you may have to redo that
the whole thing,
all over again. Nowadays, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Just punch it. Just punch it in and out, and, you know, fix the spot, and it doesn't really impact the other players.
Just like we do here on the No Nonsense Roundtable.
That's right. Where we edit out all of the mistakes I make as I'm talking.
All the F-bombs and everything we have.
So far, we've been pretty good.
We've been good boys.
We haven't F-bombed anything.
No, you know, I want to give this Burt Bacharach thing a lot of plugs because this sounds like something that's really cool and interesting. So let's talk about that. We're going to be heading into the news break in about a minute and a half. Let's go through this, how to get the tickets, the whole deal. We'll do a commercial for it in a second or two, but go through that, will you? Please?
I'll do it as fast as I can in a minute and a half or less. So An Evening of Bacharach is something I started working on a couple of years ago. The real reason behind it, or the driving reason behind it, was we all see when schools are faced with budgetary issues, it seems like the arts are the first place that get hit.
Right, sure.
You know, and it's been that way forever, but it's getting worse and worse. And I want to do something about that. So I wanted to come up with some sort of program that would allow me and other musicians to support young musicians in the Rochester area. And so I devised An Evening of Bacharach. So we're doing an entire evening of Burt Bacharach music. And for people that think they don't know Burt Bacharach, I guarantee you they do. They just don't know his name, but they'll know all the songs. And we can talk a little bit more about that. The event is taking place on April 19th at the Theater at Innovation Square here in Rochester. There'll be some great guest artists besides an entire band and orchestra on stage. I've spent the last year writing all of the orchestration scores for the show, but we're going to have people like Russell Tompkins Jr. from the Stylistics, Kirsten Piper Brown, who is a world-renowned soprano. I'm also involving some students. We'll have great students from Webster Thomas High School singing a very difficult piece of music that people are going to be blown away by. And then just some great, great players in Rochester.
And where do you get your tickets?
You get your tickets by going to Theater AIS. AIS stands for at Innovation Square. So
okay.
TheaterAIS.com.
.com.
And look for shows.
And when we come back, we're going to play a few of Burt Bacharach's songs, or at least as much as we can get away with without a copyright problem. And we'll see you after the news, and you'll hear that music. This is Dom for my friend John Myers and his new company, Life Interviews. I'm going to ask you to go look at the website he has, Life Interviews. There's no T in it, Interviews, where you'll see a fantastic presentation on what they do. And what they do is create a video legacy for you to pass down to future generations. More than just getting your DNA, you can pass down your story. Go see, you'll be amazed. It's a great idea, but do me a favor. Wait till the end of the No Nonsense Roundtable. Well, like I promised you, coming out of the news break, I was going to have a little medley of Burt Bacharach's songs.
Easy for you to say.
Easy for me to say. Because I think a lot of people don't understand these songs are from him. I mean, the other group that's like that, I think, is the Rascals. People don't understand, It's a Beautiful Morning, grooving, everybody's got to be afraid. They know the songs. As a matter of fact, how many people have It's a Beautiful Morning as a ringtone?
Sure.
I think Gene Cornish gets a buck every time somebody wakes up with, to that thing. So,
and what's funny is it's once removed because with the Rascals were doing Rascal songs, for your example.
Yeah.
But when you talk about Burt Bacharach,
that's right.
Now you got to go from the writer to the artist. So if people know Dionne Warwick, 90% of everything she recorded, Burt Bacharach wrote.
Yep.
But they don't know that, so they'll say, "Well, I don't know who Burt Bacharach is."
Yep. So here you go.
Breaking up.
The moment I wake up, before I put on my makeup, I say a little prayer for you. And while combing my hair now,
Raindrops are falling on my head. And just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit.
So there you go, boys and girls. I'm sure you remember those because you're all over the age of 20.
There you go. You're almost legal to order a beer.
You're almost, yeah. But I mean, and the word I use a lot of times is that there is music that is woven into American culture, right? I mean, there's some stuff that comes and goes. But there's some stuff that just lives on and on. And as a performer, that's got to make you happy. Now, one of the things we were talking about before is this studio performing, and I never really quite thought about it before. But one of the things when you hear a live performance, the little the little quirks to it,
the little inconsistency
actually add to the charm of it. It adds to the charm of it. It's like a cloud. The cloud is never, you never see this exactly the same clouds. It's always a little bit different. And then the artist who's on stage can have a little bit of leeway of making it one way or the other and say, well, maybe this downbeat should be here or whatever. I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to the construction of music, but you have some type of inconsistency there, which leads to the charm. But when you're doing something studio, it's got to be pretty well perfect. I mean, whoever has the authority to say, oh yeah, let's print that. he's the boss, and whatever way it's got to be, right? I mean, that's the big difference, no?
It is, but it's interesting because as you were saying that, you're making me think about several studio experiences throughout my career where the inconsistencies became the part. So not everything is written in stone when you walk into the studio. Sometimes there's a framework and an idea of the song, and somebody at some point may play something that catches someone's ears, and they say, "Oh, wait a minute, let's use that." So now that becomes the part. And so from a listener standpoint, you just thought that was sort of part of the master plan, and it was always there, but it actually came out of some interaction with other musicians. So there is that environment in the studio as well. It's a very creative environment. What I'm meaning when I say, that you're trying to get it very, as perfect as you can, when you walk out of the studio, it's kind of chiseled in stone, so to speak. It's going to be like that once it gets released forever. But it's a very creative environment when you're in the studio. My point is that you need to be very open to suggestion. Like I use the term all the time. I may have even said this in the last segment. It's you just need to be open to being produced, but also open to contributing when people ask you to. I've had many times where a producer will say, "Well, I'm just not really sure about this bridge." I use that as an example. There's just something's not working there. Do you have any ideas of something that you might play? And I'll maybe come up with a different idea, or I'll just approach it slightly differently, and that may spark something in somebody else and say, "Oh, well, what about this?" We go back and forth, and all of a sudden we've got this new section. So, I think you're bound to be a player that can deliver what they want, a player that can be creative when needed, and that's sort of the Reader's Digest version of how to be a studio musician.
We'll be right back after this.
Saturday, April 19th at the Theater at Innovation Square. Enjoy an evening of Bacharach. Proceeds benefiting music education in the Rochester City School District. An evening of Bacharach featuring guest performances by Russell Tompkins Jr., voice of the Stylistics, and world-renowned soprano Kirsten Piper Brown. An evening of Bacharach at the Theater at Innovation Square. Get your reserved seats now at theaterais.com/box office.
Welcome back. We are in our last segment talking with, if you say talking to, that doesn't sound right. Talking with Billy Goodness. Now, when did you change your name to Billy Goodness? That's pretty good. Was it when you were young and knew you needed a stage name, or how'd you get to Billy Goodness?
Oh my God, that's great. That's a great question.
Well, there you go. Well, you're blushing, so
I am, because it's really my name.
That's really your name.
Yeah, I've spent pretty much my whole career explaining to people that was really my name, because it doesn't sound like a real name. It sounds like a stage name.
Well, what was Frank Zappa's kid's name? One was Dweezil. And Moon Unit. His daughter, yes. Yeah, and Chastity. That really worked out well for Cher, right?
Well, those are just odd sounding names. My name just sounds
No, it
fake.
sounds like a professional. Yeah, it sounds like, it sounds like you bought the name.
I actually had somebody ask me a couple of months ago, came up to me just kind of on the side and said, "Do you ever tell anybody your real name?" I said, "This is the one I got when I got here."
When you go to the TSA, does the guy checking your luggage look at that and go, "Nah, got to shake down this guy. It can't be right. It's got to be an alias,
right.
AKA."
Right. His name is Goodness, and then you have to live up to that.
Yeah, then you live up to that. Now, one of the questions I have, because, not everybody that plays the piano can make music, right? A lot of people are trying to get into the business and make a living and support themselves. What is the secret? What is the secret sauce? What do you need to do?
Well, I don't know if I have a secret sauce. I've had a lot of people over my lifetime ask me, "Well, what do I need to do to make it?"
Yeah.
And the first thing I ask them is, define make it. What it is to you?
Very good.
That is, do you want to have hit records? Is that making it? Because I'm assuming that's what they're asking me about. So the first thing I tell them is, leave. You need to go somewhere else. And I also say,
You mean like other than Rochester,
Well,
or
just wherever your hometown
or the
is.
room that you're in?
Well, it could be both.
could be
You
both,
usually
okay.
have to leave the room you're in order to leave
Well,
the city you're in. So it's a sort of sequential.
I'm just being a wise ass.
That's
I'm sorry.
okay. I'm with you. I'm with you on it. But no, I tell them a couple of things. One is stop listening to your friends, whose job it is to tell you how great you are. All our friends are going to tell us that, and they're going to come and see our bands and they're going to tell us we're great, and they absolutely mean it. And maybe we are, maybe we aren't, but that's that comfort that you get in your hometown, and it can be scary to go somewhere else. But I honestly believe that what you need to do is to pack up your stuff, grab your guitar, whatever it is you play, and go to where the pros are. Go to a music city and measure up against that. Two things will happen. One, you'll have done something that's really brave to do. And then you'll have the opportunity to really find out. And one of the things that I will often tell people is you can do the things that I did, and I'll tell you what I did. It's no guarantee it will work because I didn't have a master plan either, other than I went. So I can't guarantee that you will make it, depending on your definition of make it for yourself. But I can pretty much guarantee that if you just sit in your hometown and listen to your friends, you'll have a great time. But I guarantee you will not have hit records because you can't do it from here or there or wherever your here is. And that's, people can argue that point because this is the digital age. And we just talked about how I'm literally playing on an album with an artist in Stockholm. So I don't have to be in Stockholm to do that record. But I had to be somewhere else to have the opportunity at this point in my career to be playing on an album of a really established artist that lives in Stockholm.
Right.
Right?
Right. You have to be where it's happening, but where it is happening doesn't necessarily have to be a physical location. But if you are, well, like my daughter's a professional photographer, she realized that if she is going to do other than the normal local stuff, she needed to go to New York, and she lives in Brooklyn, and she is in an entire environment that is different than here because there's more opportunities there.
That's where it's happening.
Right.
That's where it's happening, and that's why.
Right.
And I'll tell you, there were some great Rochester musicians that really got behind me early in my career, and were telling me, thank God, you need to go. There was a guy named David Accorso who's since left us, but a great drummer, a great champion of mine, and would often tell me, you should move to Nashville.
Yeah.
You should move to Nashville. And I did.
Well, tell me about some of that, the bands you played for and what you've done.
Well, I moved to Nashville in the mid '80s. I'm really happy to say that I never was one of those musicians in Nashville that went there and then just, like got a job waiting tables or something and tried to break into the industry. I'll briefly tell you the story because it's kind of an odd one. And again, nobody out there try this because it worked, but I don't know why. I went to Nashville for a weekend. I met some great people. I met a guy named Larry London. I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version. Larry's a great drummer, a hero of mine. He told me that, I probably should move to Nashville, but I need to be there to make things happen. And I said, well, I brought my demo tape. And I'll never forget him telling me, nobody's going to listen to your demo tape. Just go to the Musicians Union, hang out, you'll meet people, which I did the next day because I was leaving that night. There were people there auditioning keyboard players for a group. So I gave them my demo tape and I left. And a week later, they were out on tour and they were in the tour bus and their drummer gave notice. And so they popped my tape in and then called me at the next stop because this was before cell phones and said, are you moving to Nashville? And I said, I'm thinking about it. Why? I said, well, if you're moving to Nashville, we just listened to your tape. And so you've got a gig. So 2 weeks later, I was there and I saw Larry London and I told him the story and he just laughed.
Yeah, being at the right place at the right time.
That would never work again, but it did. And then, it comes down to being able to produce. And what I mean by that is people took a liking to what I was playing, I guess, because I got introduced to the right producers, and a few, gold and platinum albums later, I was pinching myself.
Yeah.
Thinking, wow. So that's the Nashville moving story. And as far as people I've played with, I toured with a guy named Ricky Van Shelton for a long time. We did a lot of shows with Reba McEntire, with Alabama.
That's what people like to hear. Come on.
Yeah.
Cough up more of that.
You want name dropping. Garth Brooks used to be our opening act.
Really?
Yeah, Garth used to open for us. We had 8 number ones in a row. It was a really magical time where like everything we did just went to number one. We did all the major award shows and won them all. And I think the highlight for me was doing the Carson show when Carson was still there.
Oh, really?
So we did the Carson show, and then I think we sold out Madison Square Garden the week after that.
Yeah.
So it was a great ride. And the beauty is I'm still playing music.
Yeah.
I still feel exactly the same way as I did when I was younger, as I was when I was sitting in Madison Square Garden. It's the same thing.
Now, on the way out, we have one more minute. We can talk more about this
Bacharach
thing.
So I really want people to come to this show. You're going to hear songs that you know, that you love, even if you don't know that Burt Bacharach wrote them. It's a great, great cause. All of the proceeds from this show are going to support music in the Rochester City School District. It's an annual show. It'll happen every year, and the 2025 concert, like I said, goes to support music in the Rochester City School District. Tickets, you can go to theaterais.com and look for the events that they have, and you can get your tickets there. They're reserved seating. So grab the tickets that you want to have. Grab the seat you want to sit in before somebody else does, and we'll see you at the show, and I guarantee you're going to just have a great time and love it.
And I absolutely 100% will be there.
You already have tickets, right?
Yes, I already have tickets. Well, I have to tell you, I think that's exciting to me because his music I remember from when I was a boy, and it's all good stuff, and the theater at Innovation Square is a great venue. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I will see you, if not before, I will see you at the Burt Bacharach thing, and God bless you for what you do for the schools. That's really cool.
Well, thank you. It's important.
Okay, next week, boys and girls, 10 o'clock, right here is the No Nonsense Roundtable.
Thanks for listening. Tune in every Saturday from 10 to 11 on News Radio Wham 1180. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.